Good stuff. Am I actually going to load in? Because, what? It says I'm streaming it, so deal with it. Quite frankly, oh, there we go. Right. Yeah, Jack. Make sure you don't include your audio. Good, good. Right. I'm loading back into the lobby because my game crashed. I'll join off you. Oh, cheers. So painful. This game is so buggy though. A lot of the time. Alright. I need to make sure I'm... No! What the... I clicked spectate. You're joking me. I clicked to do this... I'm gonna be in a car. Kill me now. Well, that's not helpful. Is there a way that you spectate when it started? Like you can, if I just join it, it does. I just don't select a car and I'm fine. Yeah, yeah. I should then be fine. Although I did that and didn't select a car, and then it said at the end of quali that I had a teammate, and then it said that I was then in the race. Or we might get a beautiful one lap of... yeah. I know. Yeah, you're meant to be hearing me, Jack. Right. So. There is a big queue forming to get round to start a first flyer at the end of Sector 3. And we're on board with DET Mitwee as he goes round through turn 1. And I need to get rid of spectator menu and hide UI because I forgot to. And I do so little of this track that it's going to be very... Oh, we have a spinner, and I think it's Chewy round at the near the start of Sector 2, maybe. Somewhere near there. No, nowhere near the start of Sector 2. Halfway through Sector 1, he spun. And we have one of the Mercedes and the other no, they're Alpines. Who's the first person on an actual lap? Looks like it's VER Bram. Yeah, VER Bram is going to be the first person to set a lap time, and he was purple in Sector 2 as we see him down the back straight. Brakes for the final, well, the final braking zone of the lap. Heads round the very, very irritating section to drive and across the line, and our benchmark time is a 1:28.156. Is that is beaten immediately by 6/10 by the Mercedes of Rian K, and then the McLaren of DET Mitwee crosses the line and is half a second off of the Mercedes time. Jack Ledford though, 3.75 tenths faster than the Mercedes, with the Haas and the Mercedes both setting times over a second off the pace, and Shuey 25 seconds off the pace, Toast 2.7 seconds off the pace, Sir with Face 1.5 seconds off the pace. Matt probably just killed someone. Well, purple second sector by the other Mercedes of DET. Oh, the other Alpine of DET's a TK1001. And we have a spinner at the last section Sheehan is round, and he looked like he might have been on a decent lap. Well, and he's just dropped it going through this last section as Zatika crosses the line and goes P5 in these first runs. As these first drivers who set times now dive into the pits to... Jack Ledford is round. And struggling to get going again. But I don't know why he must have been on a second flyer. And there's the Haas around the final corner into the pits. There's a Ferrari behind him, also not pitting, goes across the line to, well, improve by 2 tenths, but not really. I think it's Eddie improved by 2 tenths. And BRT Jacob across the line to start a first flying lap with JDM Sunrise. Oh, and Zatike spun at the exact same place Jack Ledford just did, but now Zatike has no front wing and is going to have to limp back round to the pits. He's not got far to go to get to the pits and put a new front wing on. And there's yellows in sector 1. That's JDM Sunrise, who looks like he might have made contact with the wall because there was yellows in it. He wasn't getting out of anyone's way. As we have more yellows in sector 2 for the Ferrari of Sir with Face, who may just be getting out of the way. Damn. And we have a couple of drivers heading out for a second flyer, as there's a couple heading through the Mickey Mouse chicane. Well, into... I don't know. I believe it's the chicane that Sir with Face just decided he didn't want to go through very fast. No, it's not called the Mickey Mouse chicane. But it's, well, I don't know. It's not an official name. I've heard it being called that. Also, this sounds really stupid on the stream because I'm answering you, so I need to ignore you. As it's so boring in another party though. As Shui is out on a lap, he has the Ferrari right behind him, and Shui's on an outlap. The Ferrari is maybe not on an outlap because the Ferrari's not using DRS in a DRS zone, and that is a bit of an odd one. It is Jack Ledford just deciding to almost bump draft Shuey around this swooping right-hander and up to quote-unquote the Mickey Mouse chicane. As one of the Ferraris is out, and around the final corner we have the Haas. It's still in the way of the McLaren he was trying to get out of the way of, even though the McLaren he was trying to get out of the way of was on an outlap. You were trying to get out of the way of a driver on an outlap. As over the line, VLX Shuey, that is a pretty dreadful time again. He hasn't been able to string a good lap time together at the circuit, and this could be the first time we see a real struggle for the current championship leader. Of course, there was a bit of a struggle at Imola, but for the whole Red Bull Academy together, it wasn't too bad. As we have more yellows in Sector 3, as the other Red Bull of Jer gets out of the way of a Mercedes and a Haas. Currently, as it stands, Shu was the fastest first sector though, so maybe it isn't as bad as it seems. Currently, we have a Ferrari, and then a Mercedes, and then a McLaren. That's the first 3 drivers. So, the Red Bull Academy. Oh, we have a Haas spun round, and this is the best camera angle to see a whole lot of nothing as he heads. As over the line goes Mitwee to start a new lap. ZTK comes up to the line and over the line, and no improvement there by the looks of it, as the McLaren spun out of the last corner, and Shuey up to the line sets the fastest time by by 1/10 or so, and Jack Ledford goes faster, so they're on par with each other. And there was quite some talk about Jack Ledford not being in Ferrari's good books, well, or vice versa, and talks of maybe a Mercedes move for one of Shuey's championship rivals, which I must say I would be happy with, because Mercedes Academy the GOAT. Jack Ledford on a second flyer and is purple in sector 1, so he's clearly got some consistent pace around this track compared to Shuey, and that could definitely pay off when it comes to the race. He's been able to string maybe 3 or 4 fast laps together so far this quali, and yellow's in sector 1 as Toast has to get out of the way of a couple of drivers, including Jer13. As Jer13, I didn't notice, but we see ZTK come into the pits, and no, as Jack Ledford comes around the final corner or so and comes into the pits, even though he had that purple first sector, just proving he has pace where Shuey might not have the consistent pace. As Jacob comes over the line in the Haas to start a flyer, because the lap he's just set was not good enough, and was it an outlap? Maybe it was. Why does it give me a time? It gives me a time even if it's an outlap, so it confuses me. Yeah, we have one of the Alpha Tower getting out of the way again in sector 3, as Sheehan with another extremely slow lap, heading through down the back straight of sector 3, followed by the McLaren on an outlap, and then further back Jacob is 2 seconds fast, 2.8 seconds faster this lap, 4.5 seconds faster this lap. He sets the purple sector 2 and could look to upset this top 5, which is definitely mixed up already, as clean through the last braking zone and around this very annoying section and across the line, and he does disturb the top 5 onto the second row alongside the Mercedes of Rianke with a purple middle sector and a purple third sector. So that was a pretty good job by the Haas driver, as behind him Bram crosses the line to start a fast lap, and behind him we have JDM Sunrise around the final corner, 2 seconds up on his time, but his time is 11 seconds slower, and that is a very interesting line into the pits, which he will probably get some form of penalty for. The McLaren of High 101 across the line from 9th to 5th alongside, so it's the third row is a McLaren lockout as it stands, and the Haas of BRT Jacob comes round to presumably pit and try and get out fast enough to set another lap. I don't know if he's really going to make it. as Bram also goes into the pits to try and get out in time. He might be cutting it quite fine as well. Everyone makes their way out of the pits by the looks of things. Well, having said that, a lot of people aren't making their way out of the pit. High 101 invalidated his last lap, so I'm not quite sure why he's just cut the Mickey Mouse chicane. He's trying to get round fast enough to maybe box again, but he's definitely not going to be able to because he's not got the time to. So I don't. Because he has absolutely no battery as he comes round the last corner and boxes. So no comment. As Mitwee comes out of the last couple of turns, and we see the Haas of Matt Copper 97 spin it out of the last braking zone, and he is quote unquote quite special. Everyone now. That's pretty trash, not gonna lie. Oh. I was looking at your lap, that's what. As the Alfa Romeo with Sphinx 073 goes to set an outlap, he will only have this one lap to try and make a mark, as Sheehan is round again, I have been informed. And no, he must have been, because he's on a very slow, he's on a recharge lap, so maybe not. Little possibility of a Haas toe right there, maybe, who knows? As Mitwee, who I believe was the last to Shui up to the line, does not improve. I believe Mitwee also doesn't improve. I'm now even more confused. Oh, Jack Ledford sets an even faster time, so Shui is now almost half a second off the back, as Matt Copper crosses the line, doesn't improve really by much. Jacob crosses the line and has just on the checker flag to start as last flyer, as the Aston crosses the line and doesn't improve, and that is his quali session over. He is 11.4 seconds off the back of everyone else. That is pretty impressive, as in impressively bad. As we have yellows for Matt Copper 97, as yet again an absolutely beautiful camera angle, which you can see almost nothing. As Mitwee, yeah. Oh, he's just sat at the chicane. No, you're not allowed to stop at the wall, I don't think. As ZTK up to the line, he is improving by quite a margin, and he crosses the line and goes P7. So that's quite a decent run from the Alpine driver. As across the line was that Shui, who doesn't improve by much, not even not quite a tenth. And this is pretty much your starting order. The Alfa Romeo of Sphinx puts his Alfa Romeo, which I've just said he is the Alfa Romeo, into P9 with only one run. So that's pretty impressive. As Toast on controller has not really made the AlphaTauri camp proud of that quali. And I don't... Right. Is it best I leave now, Matt? Because if I leave now and then join... No, Arthur, I didn't mean the party necessarily. Yeah. Matt's racing, Matt's race engineer. And I have backed out because we are hoping that I can get back in for the race start without the game being special and not letting me, because the way I had it was I would have been shoved at the back of the grid and I would have had a teammate and I would have had to drive the first lap and then bin it or put it in the pits or whatever. So I need to join the game again now. I've got to wait until the formation lap. Okay, wonderful. Right. Yep, cheers for that, Jack, because this is you're gonna see some wonderful F1 live gameplay. Of friends. Oh, I had an invite. Oh, fair. So this is my problem. Mail, no mail. And then it says I have mail. What's the problem with that? What do you mean they're leaving? Jack, did you disconnect? Alright, Matt, what's gone on with the thing? Jack just said that a bunch of people left. Right, okay, Jack's waffling. Have you done the... Are you in the formation lap yet? I'm not. Oh wait. Equipe Ligier? My career, which I haven't used since like a while ago. It's fine. Guys, we're just gonna casually IKEA simulator this until... Oh, hang on, what's this? I didn't realise this existed. This looks quite fun. This looks much less fun than I thought it did 3 seconds ago. Okay, right, I've just never seen this before. Right, so I will now join. So the strategy here, I believe, is hard to medium, because that's just hard to medium is apparently the strategy for every bloody track that's 50% on this game. I think it's literally medium. Yeah, well, medium, hard, medium is exactly the same thing, pretty much. Just you're going to be slightly faster at the end and die off the start. I think Jack says there was someone on the soft. So here we are. We have skipped the awful... We're on lap telemetry enabled. We want to do the tyres. We have 3 drivers on the mediums. Everyone else on the hards. Both of the McLarens opting to drive on the mediums at the start of this race. That is that's an interesting strategy. Toast on controller, also on mediums, but the 2 McLarens both on mediums. It's interesting that they didn't decide to switch things up, as Jack Ledford's going to get round to this. He's going to get round to this grid much earlier than everybody else, and he's going to be sat there for a long while because Shuey's holding everyone up in a little bottleneck. Really, he's not, because Jacob's even further back. And then, yeah, Jacob's even further back, so Bram's at the top of his own little chain as well, and we have the first driver missing their grid slot. The Mercedes of Riemke. Will there be any other failures when it comes to grid positions? Matt Copper, 97. High 101, both failing. The AI of Sheehan. No, not the AI. The AI of Zatike, who I was on, and then just... Oh, hang on. What the... Zatike doing some odd things. as we are at 5 red lights and lights are out. We are underway. It looks like no awful start from anyone. That's a nice camera for once. And there's contact, and Jer is immediately round. As further back we see the Haas make a move on the Mercedes, and the Mercedes almost pushing him through that chicane, as both of the McLarens are as they were, but Zatike absolutely dies off the start, and he's had to left because of it. Jer just absolutely crushed into turn 1 and ends up spinning round, but he's almost, as we see the Haas of Matt Copper making moves on Sphinx and Sir with Face down the straight, who are both AI. And that's a pretty big battle at the front between Jacob and Mitwi, as Riantke drops behind high. Jacob drops behind the second McLaren, so both of the McLarens using their mediums to good effect at the start of this race. As Jack Ledford has a healthy lead of almost over 2 seconds on Shuey, followed by the 2 McLarens, both on mediums, and I'll be hoping to bridge the gap. But both of the McLarens have half ERS already, as the Merc almost make it, and we have, I think there was contact further back on the Haas of Matt Copper 97. As it's absolute chaos with the AI drivers. The AI drivers in this just making it so much harder to actually see. And there's the McLaren of high around, falling back into the absolute melee of this fight. Jer's left from the back of the field, as we're now beginning to see a slight calming, as well, everyone's, I don't really want, look at this, it's an absolute train. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars, both of the Alpha Tauris, Bram with Toast just behind him, Toast on controller, having to not hit the back of his teammate, and the Haas trying to make a move on, a little bit sketchy out of that right-hander, and the McLaren sends one up his inside at the Mickey Mouse chicane, and the Haas just completely cuts across the Mickey Mouse chicane, and I'm certain it's called the Mickey Mouse chicane, that I'm going to keep on saying it and sound like a muppet, as maybe JDM Sunrise might make a move on Toast into this braking zone. He's got the move done before the braking zone, and he can just take the position, and if he can get a good enough exit, he'll be able to chase after the other Alpha Tauri. It looks like he does, as interestingly enough, the McLaren of DT Mitwi sets the fastest lap, so he's chasing after Shuey, and Shuey's gap to Jack Ledford's increasing even more. And that is a spin again from the McLaren of high, so it's all going wrong for one of the McLaren drivers, but for the other one, it's a pretty impressive run at the start of this race. And the couple of drivers that are AI currently is just annoying me because it's confusing me when I see fights going on. But we can see the Haas made a move on the AlphaTauri of Toast, and the other Haas has a healthy 2.7 seconds gap to the other AlphaTauri of VER Bran, who's literally just signed to AlphaTauri to replace Lando. So the front of the field, the Merc 2 seconds off the back of the McLaren, and the McLaren will be hoping to increase the gap and pull in Shuey, but he's not quite done that, and he's lost out a little bit in this last sector or so, and he hasn't gained at all over this last lap, so his mediums aren't quite giving him the advantage that he'd need over Shuey to get close enough to make a move, as Jack Ledford pumps in another fastest lap and increases his gap out the front to 3 seconds. Further down the field we have AI battles and Sheehan not being AI. And High not being AI. So High trying to make his way back through the field. He hasn't given up yet. He's still on them mediums. We have yellows in sector 1 for... I can't see if anyone's round. It doesn't look... But, yeah, the Mercedes of Riantke has lost out to BRT Jacob. So, he's definitely made a mistake. And we already see the Aston Martin of JDM Sunrise with single digits of ERS, with no ERS, and with 4 laps in, as he tries to stick to the back of the AlphaTauri of VER Brown, who is equally trying to capitalise on the mistake from the Mercedes of Riantke. Let's have a look at position changes. We have the Aston Martin having gained 8 positions off the start. Jer's lost 9 positions and left the race, so it's not been a good start. It's not been a good start to the season as a whole for the second Red Bull driver. And overall, it's been a pretty decent start for the AlphaTauri of Bram and the Haas of Matt Copper and the other AlphaTauri. So both AlphaTauris have had a quite decent start because of other mishaps in this race. Jer is now back in the race, so he clearly maybe didn't give up and was just had a game issue, as we see the AI doing AI things. And Bram now within a second of the Mercedes again down this back straight, but JDM without DRS and without any ERS, so he's going to struggle now. Jack Ledford's lead out the front has decreased by a couple of tenths, so he's maybe just settling in for the long haul and making sure these hards can last the stint he needs it to. And Shuey maybe could end up pushing a little bit harder than he wants to stick within a decent range to maybe undercut or overcut Jack. I'm not quite sure which one could be the most effective here, because you're going to want to make sure that the mediums you stop onto will make it to the end. But Mitwee is now losing time. So both of the Alpines are still in this race, but they are not really, they're kind of fighting for the wooden spoon as it stands, with no ERS in Zatike's case. Mitwee now dropping to almost 2 seconds off the back of Shuey, as we have the Aston Martin of JDM Sunrise losing out 2, maybe 3 positions after a big mishap, maybe even 4, because he's got a massive AI pack behind him with High and Zatike just behind that. So he's got a DRS though on Toastman into this braking zone. Is he going to get the move done? He's side by side, he's possibly outbraked himself slightly. Toast could look to maybe get back alongside, but he can't, and the Aston gets the move done. But they have got High just behind them, who is there, and then Zatike behind them, who is also there. So there's actually an interesting fight, a little bit sketchy from the Alpine out of that corner. We have an actual fight going on here between real drivers, as Sheehan once again cannot make the chicane, and Toast rallying by 2 of the drivers there, as they almost spin on the exit of that corner and lose out a little bit in their fight. But Sunrise doesn't lose out after his little drifting trip. We're turning into full-on Fast and Furious 3 here. and it's not really worked out too well for the McLaren of High, who has dropped. Oh, that Toast making a mistake, and JDM Sunrise going wide again. So mistakes galore from the real drivers, dropping back into the clutches of the two AI drivers who are just doing AI things behind them. And it's a pretty decent battle going on, as out front there's just pretty spaced gaps between everyone else, and the Haas being 7.5 seconds off the back of the AlphaTauri in P6. So this is where the real action is going on, as the McLaren looks to send one up the inside, and he does, but he overshoots the chicane slightly, and the Alpine, a little bit squeezing going on. And there's contact, and a spinner. The Aston's lost it. The AlphaTauri almost loses it. The Alpine looking to put pressure on the McLaren going into this last braking zone, because that was very, very, very ferocious defending from the McLaren. He was telling Fernando Alonso to defend he was telling Esteban Ocon to defend like a lion, while defending on the Alpine like a lion. And that was pretty darn close to some major contact, as we have the Haas of BRT Jacob makes a mistake in Sector 1 and drops back to P6. And there's a 5-second penalty to Sunrise for speeding in the pit lane, and he's retired from the session. Jacob goes wide again, so the curbs aren't helping him. He must have overheating tyres from the spin he had. So it's not really got. That was a bit of a mistake from Jacob. Dropped him a couple of positions. High looking to maybe make a move again on the Alpine. He's close enough. He's got DRS. He doesn't have any ERS in the tank, and he can't get close enough to send one up the inside. So just have to stick behind and maybe seek another opportunity, maybe on the next lap, as Jacob picks up a 3-second penalty for corner cutting. And through the Mickey Mouse chicane, I'm certain it is called that, the McLaren is a little bit sketchy on exit again from the McLaren. And Toast is under pressure from AI, which is slightly a shame. You've got two AI who are going to send one and definitely bin him out, because they can make contact with him, of course. That's going to work. And Jacob gets a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane to add to his 3-second for corner cutting. It's not a good day for the Haas of BRT Jacob. And it's kind of got from bad to worse, as we see he retires in the pit lane. He's given up completely. He's as we see the McLaren again within almost half a second, and then dropping back slightly as we head down this DRS zone. But he does have DRS. It's just the DRS zones here are a bit odd. They don't start as early as you'd expect them to out of the corners like they do in Austria. The straights are so long, and they're a little bit. This first straight is a bit curvy. That might just, yeah. A little bit wide from the McLaren as he gets very, very close to the wall from the Alpine. So they're definitely pushing the limits to keep the other driver, to try and just gain this 8th position, no, 7th position. And neither of them have any ERS, as a 3-second penalty for Sheehan for multiple warnings, so he is not having a good day. And High can't make a move into turn 1 either, so he's just going to have to sit behind. He is close, but it's going to be difficult to run behind another driver through this sector, twisting and turning. It's very difficult to use. It's very easy to misjudge your braking zone when you're right behind another car, and that is a bit sketchy from the Alpines. Almost lost it, and that could make him open to attack from that McLaren. If the McLaren could get a good enough exit here, keeps it clean over the curb, very close to the back of the Alpine now, 3/10 closer than he was last lap. He'll get DRS. He has a little bit of ERS to spend if he needs it, and well, the Alpine has about the same to fight back, but there's no move. Again for the McLaren, it's just not close enough to send one down the inside. Maybe not brave enough to go, just stamp on those brakes a tiny bit later. As that is a 3-second penalty for multiple warnings, and he almost hit, and he does hit the wall, drops it, loses an end plate, resets to track, cheeky, I'll clip that one, and gets a 3-second penalty for cutting the entry of the chicane. And that's just going to release the pressure on Zatike and make his life a little bit easier for the next couple of laps before he has to, well, the next bunch of laps before he has to pit onto mediums, and maybe the order gets shaken up again, or maybe someone ahead of him drops back, because he doesn't have that pressure from behind. But he's not going to have the pressure from high anymore, as high has just absolutely clapped the wall. And is that a VSC or a full? Full. As it is a full safety car, I can see the safety car icon. It's too early for mediums, but could we see a mediums and then a softs at the end? Because that, you could see just a glory run, maybe 4 or 5 laps on the softs, and you might be able to make up a couple of positions if you've got that pace. Because I don't think mediums are making it this way, but I don't think it's worth staying on the hards, because it's too good of an opportunity to pass up, as for some reason Byrne is sat idle at the side of the track waiting to pick up the leader, Jack Ledford, as Jack Ledford is heading down the back straight, and his almost 3-second gap to Shuey has been pretty much liquidated in an instant by High 101. Jack Ledford pits, VLX Shuey pits, DET Mitwee out of the last corner also decides to pit, so everyone making the same idea. Mitwee going on to hards. This could be a perfect opportunity for the McLaren, whose teammate crashed out. He can go on to those hards, and he could be Gucci for the rest of this race. It's a perfect opportunity. Rientke pits. I would pit if I was you, Matt Copper 97, as he pits also. The TK pits. Post around the last corner has AI behind him. The AI might not pit, which means we could end up with a... We could see some interesting strategies here, as Byrne Mylander has picked up the lead Ferrari driver of Jack Ledford. And Shuey, so they're all on... Everyone's onto the mediums, apart from Mitwee, who, by a stroke of luck, has managed to get onto those hard tyres and will be able to make it pretty cleanly to the end of this race. So that is pretty lucky from him. I'd say you'd have a pretty poor chance of getting to the end on these mediums, but it may be worth a go for those not in the fight to get back in the fight, as we see everyone get bunched back up. Let's have a very brief check at the old strategies. We're going to have some wonderful strategy checks. Sphinx hasn't pit because he's AI. And the AI of Sir didn't pit either, I don't think. He was just... Oh, he has pit. There's the strategy. There's the strategy. Let's have a look. So, ideal strategy for the general Mercedes Academy would be, if you were to have emergency strategies in case of safety car, from what lap was this? From lap 7 to 14, mediums to the end. So it seems mediums to the end might be possible from lap 7 onwards if you completely conserve them. And that is interesting, because I wouldn't say it would be able to, because that would, yeah, it would be very, very difficult to keep these to the end. And Mitwe will probably be very, very happy with this, as one of the Alpha Tauris of VER Bram has disconnected from the session, so that's unlucky for him. I don't know if he's had to go somewhere, or if the game has just done EA game things and kicked him out. Would be a slight problem for those with ghosts in front of them, as I've just been informed. If the ghosts have a bit of a problem on the restart, they might end up with penalties for passing them, but it's okay. And as we get back to the start, it looks like Jack Ledford managed to get away fast enough that Shuey couldn't send one into turn 1, and Mitwe is still right in there, followed by Riantke in the Merc. So very, very wide entry, that a very interesting line from the Red Bull, as further back is still, oh, the AI makes it so irritating to see, as Jack Ledford now with a decent enough gap, and the McLaren of Mitwe under pressure immediately from Riantke, who is on faster tyres. Riantke can send one down the inside, and he has the time to brake before he's got the car length ahead before the braking zone. So the top speed with DRS and well, no DRS, but with ERS and faster tyre compound, it's much, much faster than just hard tyres. So the Haas under pressure from DET Zatike, and Verbram, who's back in the race, it looks like. He's not AI. No, he isn't. So Jer is also here. Jer looking to make amends for the spin at turn 1, which I may or may not have commentators cursed. And Matt Copper just keeping the Alpine behind him. But the Alpine is just almost bump drafting him, but he's going to send one into turn 1. Can they keep it side by side? It doesn't look likely, but the Alpine just doesn't have the speed, and the Alpine's had to take to the escape road, and he's lost out to the Red Bull, and he's lost out to the Haas, but the Haas might be about to lose out to Jer. Will they keep it side by side? The Haas looks like he has the racing line, but then, oh, Jer's dropped it, and Jer is back, and he's lost all of the positions he's gained. And Bram gets the position on the Alpine. So for all of that, the Alpine look in a perfect position to get that 5th place. And now he's lost out down to 7th, and Jer's all the way back down to 11th after being somewhere higher up at the start and then very much at the back by turn 1. He tried so hard to get back to the front, and it's not gone well for him. As 3-second penalty for the Mercedes of Riantke for corner cutting / multiple warnings. And the gaps to the top, they are not expanding like they were, and Shuey has got pressure applied to Jack Ledford, and there's a possibility, ooh, as I was about to say, there's a possibility of a mistake from the Ferrari man. It was almost a mistake from the Red Bull man, as it gets a little bit sketchy out of that corner, and into turn 1 the gap is just over well, 6/10 on the dot pretty much. And Rientke has dropped back from Shui by about a second. Mitwi has dropped back from Rientke by about 1.5 seconds. So now the fight could be at the front for the first position, as Jur is immediately back on the back of the Alpine of Zatike, and behind him we have Toastman, who is on controller and not happy about it, with Sheehan, who has been pretty much at the back for the whole race, but now could look to have a bit of a fight with the AlphaTauri. It'll be very interesting to see how this plays out for the Alpine and Red Bull drivers, as the AI of Sir Face is caught up to, as the AI doesn't really make a mistake, but then it's slightly slower than the drivers. So they'll catch up to it and then make a mistake and drop behind it, then catch up to it, then make a mistake and drop behind it. So and there's Sheehan doing Sheehan things at the chicane. Jack read yours out and then read his out. Yours was 43, his was 46. Down the inside, not a move, almost contact between the Red Bull and the Alpine. And Zatike could be forced into a bit of an error through this twisting section, as the Red Bull behind him gets closer and closer in his mirrors, and it's just looming on the Alpine driver. It's almost inevitable as they head down this back straight, the Alpine with not much ERS, and the Red Bull has enough ERS to dump it and DRS, so you'd hope he's got a move on here, but there's no move, and is just happy to sit behind him and carry on. Just again, there's no bravery on the brakes really into that corner, which I suppose is probably understandable given that there's 12 people left in this race, 2 of them are AI, and if you crash out you're not getting any points, but if you don't crash out then you're getting at least a point. So possibly for those who would not have been expecting a point had this have been full grid and or full grid ending the race, they would probably be happy with at least a point or so in this race, as Shui reeling in Jack Ledford by maybe 0.5 a lap. That's just a bit of an estimate, as he's sticking to the back of him, average of 0.5 second, and definitely making Jack Ledford sweat a little bit down this straight, as he can just deploy ERS to defend the DRS of the Red Bull, and the Red Bull can just harvest his ERS in the meantime. And then gradually as this goes on, the Ferrari will run out of ERS, and then Shui can just play that waiting game, and he'll be in a much better position come the end of the race, so long as they can keep it this close together. And as I say that, Shui drops to almost a second behind the Ferrari. So I'm just going to maybe not say that kind of thing again, because I am probably jinxing it slightly. Further back we have the AlphaTauri of VER Bram looking to maybe make a move on Matt Copper 97 down the straight. He moves to the inside, swoops to the inside, doesn't make a move, almost pushes him into the corner though. And that was a very, very interesting look to the inside from the AlphaTauri, as there was no move for him to make, and a little bit wide from the Alpine through that corner. And is that a mistake from the Haas, because he's let Bram through into turn 1, and that can't have been on purpose. So Bram must have just had too much overspeed with DRS and maybe even ERS into turn 1 that I just hadn't predicted. As through Sector 1, Sheehan does Sheehan things once again. And Shuey is back to within a couple of tenths of Jack Ledford, but there's no space for a move down the inside of that corner, and up through the chicane again. The Red Bull just loses out to the Ferrari by a couple of tenths, so Jack Ledford has that section pretty much to a T, and Shuey just has to make up for it at the rest of the lap, because Shuey loses a good 2 tenths through that section, and there's not a lot it seems he can do about it. As down into the last braking zone, he ends up about 2 tenths off the back of the Ferrari, and then on acceleration again ends up about 6 tenths off the back of the Ferrari. So Jack Ledford maybe has an answer to the Red Bull, and he's not really dumping ERS to keep his lead. So he has this race pace, and he's maybe Jack Ledford just making these medium tyres make it to the end, and Shuey possibly getting a little bit too caught up on getting this first position, and slightly less interested on keeping his tyres in a new enough window to make it to the end of the race. As the Haas of Macrofer 97 heads down this little bit of a twist before the DRS straight, and he's possibly close enough to send one up the inside if he deploys DRS, but there's again no bravery on the brakes from anyone in this race, and he doesn't want to take the position. Further up we have Rian dropping back from Shuey again with his 3-second penalty though. He has a 4.5 second gap to midway, so as it stands he'll keep his podium position, but that's reliant on his mediums making it to the end, or his mediums not falling off a cliff. But he's putting in fastest time like PBs, but they're probably not impressive PBs on medium tyres that might be starting to feel a little bit worse for wear. As Shuey again closing on the Ferrari, but no way near close enough to have a clear shot at him down into this braking zone. And he'll get DRS, and he can have ERS if he wants it, and he'll get to about 5, maybe 4 tenths back, maybe even 3 tenths back before the braking zone, and then just sit behind him again. So it's all just a little bit monotonous as we see Jer catching up to the back of the Haas, who's just been sitting on the back of the AlphaTauri, and although he might have just been wanting to sit there and tow himself and be towed along, he might just want to get a move on because he has got arguably a faster car behind him. He's got arguably a faster car behind him, and he's although if Jer has DRS and Matt stays within DRS, Jer's on single digits of ERS, so that's a bit deep from the Haas. A little bit of a lock-up, and he might be immediately under pressure, but the Red Bull doesn't have any ERS to fight back, and the Haas can keep his position. So that was a little bit sketchy, but he's managed to keep it, and he's managed to stay, importantly, within DRS of the AlphaTauri ahead of him. So that's going to hopefully preserve his 6th position for a lap or maybe or so, because the Red Bull just will have DRS but no ERS to fight back. And Shuey has a move down the inside. Finally there's an opening, and Jack Ledford doesn't seem to fight it that aggressively. And we have a change of race leader. Shuey into P1. Shuey has a time penalty. 3-second penalty for
warning. And I didn't notice that one either. But now it's all kicked off slightly. As Shui maybe thought, oh, I need to get a move on. This 3-second penalty is going to make me pay. And Rientke behind, maybe also picking the pace up a bit because he's gained a little on the two ahead of him. As we see the Haas almost get overtaken by the Red Bull around the down to the last braking zone, and a little bit too much curb from the Haas, almost make him vulnerable. Will Jur send one down the inside? Jur does send one down the outside. Contact on the Haas front wing, and the Red Bull gets through, but there's a bit of a interesting move, shall we say, because there wasn't quite enough room there, but he definitely muscled his way through, and it's fair enough from the Red Bull driver. And he's going to now chase after the AlphaTauri ahead of him. Jack Ledford is slightly dropping back from Shuey, and they made a little bit of a mistake through that section. I think went a little bit too wide out of the chicane, and he's dropped to almost 8 or 9 tenths back before gaining it pretty much all the way back down the straight with DRS. So maybe that was a tactical play from Jack Ledford. He realises that he's not going to be able to stick ahead of the Red Bull, but he can make sure that he stays behind and force the Red Bull to deploy too much ERS. And then, so the roles are reversed here, and the mind games that Shuey had on Jack now has on Shuey. And VER Bram did lose the position to the Red Bull of Chair 13, and is now falling back, possibly into the clutches of the Haas behind. But then there's also the Alpine behind them, who you can't count out, because he has been gaining slightly, well, ever so slightly, and could get into this battle, as down into the braking zone there's enough space for no move to really happen. And it's as you were for 5th, 6th and 7th. And you may have noticed there's no Williams in this race, which hints that there's no Williams in this race because Smalley couldn't make it. And Super Mario could make it until he couldn't make it, which is a shame as well. And then our reserve, who isn't a tier 1 reserve, is a tier 2 driver now, couldn't make it either because of the old gen wheel problems that Toast is also having, so that's why he's on controller. Milan couldn't, and Sheehan on controller. Milan couldn't race on his wheel and decided that it wasn't worth him racing on controller, because with him being, I suppose, if he was tier 2 pace in a tier 1 lobby, he's already at a disadvantage as it is, but then with controller it doesn't make it any easier for him. So I can understand why you wouldn't race it. And still 5th, 6th and 7th, the gap is pretty much the same. Although Bram has dropped a little bit off the back of Jer. And I say a little bit quite a lot, and I'm going to stop. As further ahead, Rientke drops about a second from the last time I checked to Jack Ledford. And Jack Ledford still half a second back, will get DRS, ERS if he wants it, but he doesn't. And he has enough ERS if he wants it, but then so does Shuey. Shuey on 70% ERS, Jack Ledford on 60% ERS. So maybe it isn't working out for Jack Ledford the way he thought it might. Or maybe he just got caught out by Shuey suddenly making a move that he wasn't expecting. And then now he's lost out on his first position. As further back, Rientke on 17% ERS, Mitwi on 19% ERS, Jer on 14, Bram 37, Matt Hopper on 51. So he's in a good position if he can stick to the back of the two Red Bull family cars ahead of him. And if he can maybe pull something out the bag on the AlphaTauri to get a move maybe done on the Red Bull, but it's probably unlikely. As Jer isn't gaining on Mitwi, and it's just been stagnant at about 3.5 seconds for a while. So at this point, the mediums seem to be dying off slightly, and Mitwi's hards might be coming into play as the faster race tyres.
And although he is 4.7 seconds back off of Rientke in the Merc, could he pull that in 2 laps? Probably not. But if the wear on the mediums gets so bad that mistakes come into play, then it might be a factor that brings Mitwi into the podium places. As the TK comes out of the pits, going on to softs, he clearly couldn't make his mediums make it to the end. And Bram now under pressure from Matt Copper 97. He's going to try and send one down around the outside. He's not quite close enough, and Bram defends the inside and keeps the position for now. But it was the first time we've seen any proper defence into that corner. There's either no move or just a move that is allowed by the other driver. And there's a 3-second penalty for the Haas, so there's a 3-second warning for the Haas for track limits, but he claims he can get one of the warnings removed, so he might be fine. He now has no ERS heading down the straight. Can he send one down the inside of the AlphaTauri? He just might. He just does. Gets possibly... Oh! Almost had a good enough exit until he didn't have a good enough exit. And he just absolutely spun it. It was a decent move to the inside, and then it's just lost out on the exit and lost the car. As Bram's dropped to almost a second off the back of Jer. Mitwi's gained a couple attempts on Rientke. Rientke's lost about a second to Jack Ledford. So Shuey and Jack are in a league of their own, as again they're heading down this straight, and Shuey has gone from a lap ago having 70% ERS to now having 10. And Jack Ledford has gone from having, well, 60% ERS, or maybe he had 70, Shuey had 80. Jack Ledford now has 45, so Jack is in a good position, and he can... Jack has the ERS advantage, he'll have the DRS advantage. He could just be looking for that last lap move on the Red Bull for this race win in Miami. Would it be his first race win of the season, and it would definitely bring him back into the title fight. Although Shuey's still got a pretty commanding lead at the top. As we head across the line onto our final lap of this race, which has been a pretty decent race, all things considered. No game-breaking bugs necessarily. Decent amount of DNFs for it to be interesting. And
Bram is possibly close enough now to make a move again at the end of this lap, but he has the same amount of ERS, so he's possibly not going to get the aid he needs from the electricity in his car. As Jack Ledford, if he can get a good enough exit, he's deploying ERS all the way down the straight, so is Shuey, and Shuey's going to defend to the inside, and Jack's going to try and send one round the outside. He's alongside, he's ahead into the braking zone. Shuey's going to try and send it back down the inside though. He isn't late enough on the brake. Jack goes wide, and Shuey almost keeps the position, but then Jack just gets on the power fast enough, and he's ahead. And that was the move the Ferrari was waiting for the last couple of laps. And if he can keep it in a straight line, well, in the right direction for the last sector of this race, then that's going to be a maiden victory in Season 7 of F1WL for Jack Ledford. And it's going to be a pretty impressive victory at that. Further back, Bram losing out about a second on this lap. He's clearly struggling slightly on these mediums. But what really matters is a little bit sketchy from the two of them on the exit of the last corner. Both doing a little bit of Fast and Furious 3. And over the line, Jack Ledford is your winner in Miami. That is a decent drive from the Ferrari, man. Mitwee got the position on Rientke over the line. So Mitwee was close enough to get that position because of the 3-second penalty. So that is a podium for the McLaren. The mediums to hards with the safety car just worked. That is a very, very, very good job. He's got that position by 0.044 of a second within the 3-second penalty. So assuming that Rientke can't appeal any of the warnings for the penalty, he's going to end up losing that position, and it's the McLaren who brings up the podium, or as the last driver on the podium. Just a casual 45-minute race for yous. I am tired. I'm going to have a nice little sleep before qualifying at 11 tonight. And the rest of your order brought up by a couple of AI and a couple of arguably non-contenders because of game problems. So it was a very good race overall, in my opinion. Now, we've had a couple of boring races. Imola was a bit of a confusing race with game bugs, so it was very difficult to understand where you stood with it. But overall, this race has been pretty entertaining. And when there wasn't action at the front, there was action in the mid-pack. And then when there wasn't much action in the mid-pack, there was a pretty nice call from Jack Ledford to drop behind the Red Bull and then attack him on the last lap. And it worked out for him. And here we have it. Your final. So, we'll leave it there. We will leave it there, and you'll have to tune in tomorrow for tier... Actually, no, don't tune in... Oh, I'm joking. You tune in tomorrow for tier 3, which I will be sadly driving in. Maybe for all of about 3 laps, because this is not a good track for me. And then tune in next week for... Is it... maybe... I'd be making a complete guess for what's next round, but any guess would. It doesn't matter what the next round is because it'll be interesting, and it'll be Baku. So do you know that could be a good? That'll be a good race. Definitely some interesting DRS strategies will go on in the middle of that one, and I'll hope to see you there.